What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are getting close to the end of our look-aheads for every NBA team leading into free agency, trade season, the offseason in general. We are on to the Pacific Division, so we'll cover those 5 teams in just a second. We refer you to the Central Division pod where we went through kind of some of the first apron, second apron limitations in general, but we will tackle them as we need to with each team here. But first and foremost, Mr. Hughes, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for some hopefully cathartic discussions about one of the teams that we're going to talk about today.
I know you
You
feel
said
really
it's
strongly
Pacific
about the
Division,
Kings,
right?
right?
Yeah, I just really need to get some stuff off my chest about the Blazers, or no way, about the Kings. I don't know my divisions anymore. No, good. I'm excited we're here. I'm excited we only have one more of these to do, and then we won't have to think about the offseason ever again because we'll just
Until Wednesday when there's the draft and
right.
everything. The draft starts, everything changes. Do we want to go through our first team, or should we just sit here awkwardly until people ask why we're just sitting here in
I
silence?
think the second one would be good. Let's see how long of a just dead
I would
silence.
break first. I could tell you right now. I can't sit in awkward silence.
All right, I'll take us into the Warriors here. You may have heard Klay Thompson is a free agent. That is kind of one of the main things hanging over this offseason in a big way for the Warriors. Add in Chris Paul there potentially. He's got a $30 million salary that's going to guarantee on June 28th if they do not push that guarantee date back, which some of the reporting suggests is something that may happen, just to sort of give the Warriors more options as far as deciding like how much of that to guarantee, if any, and they may be able to use them in a trade. So that's something else to keep an eye on there. Kevon Looney also has a partial guarantee, $3 million of his $8 million. The guarantee date on that's June 29th. Dario Saric, the Warriors have non-bird rights on him. I would be surprised if he returned, but we'll see. So the salary cap is just to get kind of where they are out of the way here. Very much in flux. Like, so the ownership has said we'd like to get out of the tax totally, which is actually doable, but not without losing some major cash here. So at the moment they're about 25 million, a little more under the tax line. If they renounce Klay, don't bring him back, waive Chris Paul, they get significantly lower than that and could access the non-taxpayer mid-level. If they get all the way under, they get the full mid-level. It's just hard to imagine that. We could talk some more about that. I don't know. There's some extension eligibility, like really none of which I would expect to get done. Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga have the rookie scale deals that are eligible to be extended. Steph Curry can get another year and a whole bunch of money, 60 plus million. This is a team that could conceivably have a ton of needs, right? If you lose Klay Thompson, you lose Chris Paul, that's a bunch of backcourt minutes that are gone. So, I mean, Andrew Wiggins is someone that's been talked about as a trade candidate. So you may have another need there depending on what happens. So this is, there's a lot of ways to go for this offseason for the Warriors. And I personally, like, I don't have a good sense, or maybe you feel differently about like which direction this is going to go. Because you've got the Steph Curry of it all. Like, you have to give him a competitive roster. You've got young guys you may finally want to like give a little bit of a longer leash to. Do you need to contend? Do you need to get under the tax? There's just like, and by the way, the Warriors have the young guys in the picks maybe to trade to get a veteran upgrade if they want to. So a lot of ways to go. That's a lot of preamble, but I don't know. You can take it any direction you want there. Maybe we start with Klay Thompson. What do you think about his likelihood of staying? What do you think about the dollar figure that should be at? Where are you on him?
I do think he's ultimately back because I just don't know what team is going to come over the top for him, even if it's a balloon payment for 2 years. Orlando's out there, and Monk is obviously off the market now, so perhaps they go that direction. Detroit's a wild card. Does he really want to play in Detroit, though, just because they're giving him more money? I'm wondering if, and the thing I did find comical was the reporting from The Athletic that there have been talks, but that there are no offers on the table. And so I'm like, well, what are these talks about? Like, they just like the weather, the best strain of cannabis, scaffolding? Maybe I just don't like what are they talking about if they're not talking about offers? I ultimately wonder. I think he's going to stay. This is the organization that did give him a 5-year 190 max after he tore his Achilles, which is not something I'm not going to be like, well, that's charity. It wasn't. Like, his track record spoke for itself, but he did not come close to actualizing the value of that contract. And so I'd expect him to be back. I think the number is probably going to be like 2 and 40, maybe 2 for 50. If they're really not going to give him multiple years, that's when I could see him leaving. So I'm curious, that would be close to at least where you would land?
Kind of like, I guess what it seems like things are angling towards now is sort of the Warriors saying without saying, like, go see how you can do, because there isn't an offer on the table. That's according to Anthony Slater of The Athletic. And I mean, whatever that even means, right? Clearly there was an offer before the season last year. I guess that was 2 for 48 was the reporting, which Thompson turned down. I don't think
Which
he's
I
going to
thought
get
was
that.
wild at the time.
Yeah, he's not getting that
No,
this summer, I don't think.
not from Golden State anyway.
No, I wouldn't think so. And so I do think it's a little bit like the Monk situation and a couple others we've talked about, where it's like, oh my God, they can't, look at all these other teams out there that could come over the top. But then you start going team by team, and it's like, but would they? And so I do think that's why the Warriors' posture seems to be, go see what the best offer is. Maybe, bring it back to us, which he's not obligated to do. This is not restricted free agency, right? He could just sign it and middle fingers and I'm out of here. But I think that's the Warriors' plan, is like, if Orlando is willing to go 2 for 50, then you let us know that, and maybe we're just like, no thanks, and that's it. Yeah, that's just what it is.
So the thing that I'm struggling with this team, and it does fold into the Klay Thompson discussion, is my guess is that they want to finish, because Joe Lacob said this, I think it was in February. They don't want to just like finish beneath the second apron of the first. They just want to be out of the tax. They want to get to a point where they're resetting the repeater clock, which they have already triggered. But there's also the reporting was that one of the pieces from Anthony Slater saying they're trying to use Chris Paul's expired. They would guarantee it for a certain amount and move him to try and net a bigger name. And I'm like, so there's still a pathway. You could essentially, the way I'm looking at it is, if you want, you can keep one of Chris Paul or Klay Thompson at a fairly high number if that's your team, and then stay under the tax. So like, is that what the plan is? Or is it like the fact that you're shot, like an upgrade implies like, so then you're going to consolidate, and are you still trying to get, I would assume, a star or a fringe star while staying beneath the tax? Because that gets just like, that almost just doesn't make sense, because it's like, well, we're going to be aggressive and make this move and then still finish outside the tax, which will invariably cost you talent still, where it's, well, you have to let Klay walk, or it's, well, are they just going to start including Kuminga and Pods in trade so that their salary is beneath that, like the actual tax line? So that's what I'm struggling. Like, there's so much mixed messaging out there for this team. And I don't know if you want to frame it as, what do you think they ultimately wind up doing? Like, if you were to map out their offseason in terms of the three main transactions, which is what happens with Chris Paul, what happens with Klay, and then do they actually make a significant trade or significant addition? Is it like, do what you think they're going to do and what you think they should do those diverge from one another?
That's why I have such a hard time getting a handle on what the plans are. I think, well, don't you think it's either or? For like, if Thompson comes back, then Paul, maybe it's much more likely he just gets waived, right? Like, because you sort of, you can't, I mean, I don't know that getting under the tax is super realistic, and it's like not getting significantly worse either way, but it sort of feels like,
do you think a team would just take, I guess that we didn't discuss that option, which is why I'm interrupting, is what if they decide to bring back Klay Thompson and either keep Chris Paul because they want to use him as a trade asset during the season, or they make a trade with Chris Paul for a bigger contract, and then are you able to dump, like, would any of the cap space teams just take Andrew Wiggins?
I mean, I think so. I mean, of the free agents that are out there, and you look around, like, what's it going to cost to get, I don't know, pick a random like Miles Bridges or something. Like, would you rather pay market rates for Miles Bridges or take Andrew Wiggins on his current contract? I mean, it's at least a conversation, depending on the team. So I guess as I'm thinking of it, like, I think I agree with you that it feels fairly likely that Thompson will be back, which to me means Paul's probably gone, because if you guarantee Paul with the intention of trading him for a $30 million player, assuming you fully guarantee it, then this whole, like, let's get out of the tax is like, just not, that's out, right? That's not happening.
Again, unless are you trading Andrew Wiggins? And even that, like, the math is going to get tight there, because even if you just, like, if you remove Chris Paul and Klay Thompson just from their books right now, they're over the cap. Like, they're at like 145. So $4 million over the cap. That gives them what, like $27 million to work with beneath the luxury tax. And so if you brought both of them back, let's say that totals $50 million, you got to shed another $25 million somewhere, which is basically Andrew Wiggins.
Well, but how about this then? Let's say the other either or. So if you, to me, Wiggins, or the idea of Wiggins, like certainly last year Wiggins would not would make this a harder case. I think you're better with Wiggins than you would be with the $30-ish million player you would get back for trading Chris Paul, probably. I don't know who that would be, because in theory, you're giving Chris Paul to someone that wants the salary relief after this year, and you're taking back a deal probably with multiple years on it in that $30 million range. I don't know who that is that's going to make, because then in this hypothetical, if you're doing that Paul trade, then like you said, Wiggins is probably gone unless Thompson's gone. So there's like a lot of moving
Brandon
parts.
Ingram do anything for you? That's an expiring contract to work with.
Well, and you're trading Wiggins for Ingram in this hypothetical?
No, you're trading Chris Paul and then another salary to get because they're trying to finish under the tax.
Yeah.
So you could aggregate in that scenario and take back some more money. But my guess would be why would New Orleans just take Chris Paul for Ingram straight up? So it would have to be a packet. Maybe you are trading Wiggins in that scenario, because they're probably going to want not just a Pods or a Kuminga or whatever, your Trace Jackson Davis and picks. They're probably going to want actual players. So I think I agree with you there, which is why I don't know if you have anything else to say on the trade stuff. I was going to ask you, it does seem like the most likely scenario for them is they bring back Klay Thompson, Chris Paul is gone, and they just make no like meaningful additions, because unless Klay Thompson like gets significantly less to where, we can use all of our mid-level exception or something. So shouldn't that make it more likely that they lock down a Moses Moody or a Kuminga on an extension, just because those guys are going to get more minutes, and there's a chance that if they have a really good year, you're going to cost yourself a shit ton of money down the line, especially with Kuminga specifically. So if you have any belief in him, it feels like you could probably lock him up at what I would assume is a not absurd deal right now, but your gut says that you think they're going to value the flexibility over that.
A little bit, yeah. And I do think, you can point to, well, the Sixers let Tyrese Maxey go to restricted free agency. That's a different situation, and they had a reason for doing it, because they want to, they can use the value of his cap hold.
They're currently linked to every free agent under the sun, by the way. Every single report just has like the Sixers are prepared. Plan Q is going after Derek Jones Jr. and poaching him from the Mavericks or something.
My just a gut feeling, and maybe there's been some reporting on it over the years, but like I kind of think Kuminga specifically is going to be someone that's like max. I'm going to need that max, or like something close to it. I just feel like everything we've heard about him is that he firmly believes that he is like a guy and I don't know that you're going to be like Moody, different situation. I think he like understands he's a role player. Probably still frustrated with what he has not been allowed to do in terms of, he's just like, talk about a short leash. He's just his whole career.
Andrew Wiggins, that opens up some serious minutes for Moses Moody. And this is Klay Thompson too. Yeah,
sure. This is the thing with the Warriors, is like my position on them for a long time has been to be conservative and just hope that you get some of the young guys improve enough to offset the older guys getting older or leaving. That almost feel like what you've said earlier. It almost feels like that's a pretty realistic possibility.
We've spent so much time on them, and I did come up with targets, but I just like, we don't know what they're going to be like. We just don't know what spending power they're going to have. Like, they are the team where it's, you can't. So I'll phrase it this way. Is there even one trade target that you would say, fuck everything for, and like, we'll figure it out after it happens? And then what is the biggest need? Like, if you had they have multiple needs you outlaid, what is your biggest need for their team? And then I'll throw you a minimum type signing that I would like. And that's just the extent. Their hypotheticals are too just all over the fucking place to go deeper.
I think if you're talking about a player where I'm like, yes, get him. It starts at like the Markkanen level for me.
It's pretty low baseline in terms of the fuck it, let's do it.
Well, I mean, if it's him or like Paul George or Jimmy Butler, I guess you'd say George or Butler are better for the next year, maybe, probably. But the cost and the everything else, I think. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
What is your big, like, if they're only able to fill one need?
It feels to me like Steph is not at a level where he can be the sole generator of offense anymore, and so you got to have that second guy that can create shots, can make other guys better, can bend the defense towards him, take pressure off Curry,
Zach
somehow
LaVine, I
turn
get it.
Curry
I
back
see what
into
you're
an
saying.
off-ball weapon. Yeah, Kevin Durant.
I was gonna say the Zach LaVine trade. I see what
No,
you're
Kevin
doing.
Durant does it. But yeah, so something like that. I think. I mean, they have several needs. They need a big guy that can help them on both ends that you're sure about. But yeah, I think it's the shot creator, scorer. Really, it's like a second star because they just that guy's not there.
You could totally get that while ducking the tax, right? That's not like a
Right,
big deal.
easy, no problem.
I think just two names. I don't know what they're going to be spending, but if Jalen Smith opts out of his contract, I'd like him here, sort of a stretch big that they don't really have, unless Draymond's going to shoot like he did again. And then like a Gary Harris flyer, like something like that feels like it'd be
Sure,
good for them.
I agree.
We are on to the Los Angeles Clippers. Notable free agents. I don't know, Grant, if you heard, but Paul George has a player option that he could decline, opt into, cause chaos with. James Harden is a free agent. Mason Plumlee's a free agent. Daniel Tice is a free agent. Russell Westbrook has a player option, which if he declines, they will have his early bird rights. I feel like he'll be disappointed on whether or not they use them if he does opt out, though. Their salary cap situation is semi-fluid, but I'll lay it out this way. There'll be a second apron team with both Paul George and Harden. They can probably duck the tax if PG leaves and they keep Harden, because I'm assuming Harden doesn't get the max, but that would still, you're talking PG's gone. You're not taking any players back in return. And then they're probably still a taxpayer in the unlikely event Harden leaves, but PG stays. This is all to say their best spending tool this summer are their minimums. In terms of extensions, Norman Powell can sign a max extension of 3 years and $92.9 million. I don't think he would command that much. And then Terrence Mann, more interestingly, which just proves that I should trust my math more, but I saw it in an ESPN piece, so I assume Bobby Marks checked it. But right now we're estimating it's the 4 year and $78 million deal. I kept seeing 80 thrown around there. I actually think that number will go up, but he's eligible for a 4 year, $78 million extension. My bet is neither of these guys get one. That's really just, we have to start with the Paul George stuff. And I might do a mini pod or a segment on the challenges of Paul George going to the Knicks because of how he's linked there and how I feel like we didn't fully compute. This is for all teams, applies to league. Like, you lock yourself in to, like, you're hard. If they traded for Paul George, for instance, which is the challenge of, you could say Paul George can opt in and go to any team he wants, but any team that sends you back more than one player and they're taking back, and they have to take back more money because the Clippers can't take back more money. It has to be dollar for dollar or less. They are now locked beneath the first apron. And so you're fitting Paul George's $48+ million salary beneath an apron. If you're a team that's already good, that's basically impossible. So what do you expect to be the outcome of Paul? Do you expect him to be back? Do you think he'll leave?
I think to me, it's like 50-50. He's specific. I want to be specific. Like, it's the Sixers or he's back. I just don't know how. It's hard. I've tried to get him to the Knicks a million times, making up fake trades. Like, I think
you can, to be clear.
Yeah,
it's just like,
it's intriguing. I like that fit better on the floor than the Sixers. I like the idea of him not being tethered to a super injury prone star, being a third option. Like, I like all that stuff. I just think the Sixers, it's so clean with the Sixers. Like, they have the money, he opts out, they sign him, or like whatever it is. And then, so,
do you know what actually is fairly clean? And I'm on board with it. I don't know if you listen to, I know we're both Dunked on Prime subscribers, and I know those guys catch a lot of shit and I don't agree with them on anything, but the amount of content and like the level of effort they put into it, like, you think this podcast is comprehensive. Like, this isn't they've made it their full-time thing. Kudos to them. They had him. Did you listen to their mock off season?
No.
They had Paul George ending up in Oklahoma City.
I mean, that
would officially make the Paul George trade one of the worst trades of all time for the Clippers, because that'd be one of the best trades of all time. But that's like those. But I didn't mean to interrupt. But those are the two teams where it's like it's fairly clean, even though the OKC would have to be a trade. So I'm with you on what you were saying. Is basically.
And so I don't know. I guess if, like, gun to my head, I think he just is going to come back. I think this is like an attempt to leverage outside offers. There being like the Sixers being the main one. See if he can do better than that Kawhi deal. It doesn't sound like Clippers are going to bend on that. I think ultimately that's a pretty good pay rate for George, who's made $1 jillion in his career as it is. So I would guess he's back. It'll just be sort of dramatic.
So I'm going to ask you, because I think most people agree if he opts in, it telegraphs that he's gone, right? You don't think he'll just extend off that number? I tend to agree with that sentiment. Do you think he gets the max to stay? Do you think he'll get a no trade clause? Do you like, because they don't really have a ton of leverage, but you did just sign Kawhi to this slightly below max deal. We got to stop framing it as like some fucking chivalrous move by Kawhi Leonard, who doesn't finish any season healthy at this point. But do you think he gets the max if it's with the Clippers?
I think he gets what Kawhi got. I think that's right.
I think he puts him over a barrel and he gets what he wants. I just don't think they have. If the Sixers are sitting right there and you know they will max him, how do you just say, I won't predict a no trade clause? I'll say that. But like, how do you say no to what he wants when he can literally just like this isn't James Harden of last year. Like he could literally just leave because there's a market for him.
I think there is, and you're right, and it's a risk. And I think what I'm positing is that the Clippers are gonna call the bluff because of all the LA stuff, of all, he really wanted to be there.
Podcast studio is there.
Doors
ours is being built for anyone who's just wondering.
It seems like that's how they're playing it. That's my guess. Now they might be wrong. he might call his bluff, and he might just be like, wasn't kidding, guys, I'm out. And then maybe you have to say like, okay, so about that, like opt in and extend and trade or what, like, let's try to get something out of this. Maybe it gets to that. But I don't know. I feel like he'll be back, and I feel like he's going to get the Kawhi number, and all the rest of this is just kind of like delaying not the inevitable, but delaying what I think is the likely outcome.
I'm feeling pretty reckless, so I'm going to say he leaves. And I won't predict how maybe he opts in and gets traded, or he just signs with the Sixers. I don't think he's not going to sign with anybody else outright. I don't think he's not going to go to Detroit. No. He'd be fun in Orlando, but he's not going to go there. I think he leaves. He's going to end up with the Sixers, the Knicks, or the Thunder, or maybe it's the Warriors. Like they're just getting rid of everybody in that trade. Enough on Paul George. I don't know what James Harden gets, so I can't remember what the over/under, number I set for Brian Toporek was. I'm going to say $38 million for next season. Do you think he's making over or under that? His max, by the way, is noticeably more than $38 million. So he's like eligible for the same max salary as Paul George. The difference is that he doesn't have a market that's going to pay him the $49.4 million.
I think that's the issue, is like you're having a hard time finding spots where George could realistically go. There's a handful. I think there's even fewer for Harden. So I think it's going to be down in the like high 20s, mid to high 20s.
Holy shit.
And if you got to give him 2 years or 2+1 or something at that pay rate, I just like, why are they paying him in the third? Like, why? Who's beating them? Where's he going to go?
Like I just feel like that's not how it works though, because we've seen other players before, like you're just wondering, okay, well, who was giving them that much money, and then they got it anyway.
Well, yeah, and that's bad management. Like
Marvin Bagley with Detroit. Let's like this is smaller. Who was giving him 3 years and 30? And I guess in Harden, like teams don't play hardball with players. Oh, wow, I did not expect you to say in the 20s. That's incredible.
I really am not convinced that there's anywhere else for him to go because of just the way that he's operated over his career, and like, so maybe what this results in is a pissed off James Harden is like, fucking great. Like we'd hit the several month mark anyway. He was going to get mad about something and quit on the team. So, we might as well have a guy quit on the team making 25 as opposed to close to 40.
Wow. I will entertain the under 38 million. I don't know if I can go below 30. I hope it. If I put our faces on the thumbnail, that would have been the screenshot is when you said that. I was not expecting it. Other things with this team, what do you think their biggest, like if you would identify that they have a bunch of different needs, if they want to unlock small ball lineups, like they need a big that could help them do that. They need more rim pressure, more athleticism. They could use higher volume 3-point shooting. What do you think? Let's say Paul George and James Harden are back.
Well, what is their big? I like the change of pace big. Although even with that said, like I think Zubac is a really good starting center that works awesome against most lineup configurations. But again, this is a team that has semi-unrealistic now designs on competing at a high level, and you're going to need that change of pace, that spacing, that switchability, that kind of thing. So just viewed through that lens of like, we're going to be in conference finals or whatever. I don't think that's going to happen regardless. But if that's how you're looking at this team, then you've got to have that element. And then, like they kind of weirdly have a lot of needs. You listed a bunch of them, but it's like, I I don't know. I think you definitely need more shooting. You definitely need someone that like a pure. Could you get a pure point guard in there? Maybe. Do you need
Chris
that too?
Paul resign if he gets waived.
Yeah, maybe. I mean that's. I think that's actually a pretty good
I
fit
like them
there.
as this wasn't a pure point guard, but I thought it addressed some multiple things for them. They were a good Alex Caruso trade destination for me. And ironically, they could have given the Bulls a better package than the Bulls accepted for.
Mhm.
So could the OKC Thunder, but the Bulls are the Bulls. And I'll wrap it up here and I'll throw off targets quickly for them because there's another team where it's minimums and like some trade stuff.
Yeah.
Who's more likely to trade their 2031 draft pick, the Clippers or the Suns? Or the Bucks. You could throw the Bucks in there.
I mean, no more teams. It's the Suns.
Okay, the Bucks or the Clippers?
Uh,
It's the Clippers.
I think it's probably the Clippers because you see the Bucks. They're talking about maybe we trade Brook Lopez. That's a very different.
Wish we had more times. I would love to get into that. That's fascinating to me. Yeah. So like, if Kyle Lowry doesn't go back to Philly, Justin Holiday would be good here. Is Taurean Prince a minimum guy? What happens with Luke Kennard if his team option gets declined? Change of pace big. Luka Garza, Xavier Tillman. I don't know how much money he ultimately commands. Torrey Craig is a player option. Would he prefer to play in Los Angeles rather than Nowheresville? That is the Bulls where they reside. Nick Richards is a trade target, only making $5 million. Grant Williams as the change of pace big for them. Josh Richardson as a player option. He is coming off major injury though. Dorian Finney-Smith, I don't know if he really checks enough of the boxes, and then you have to trade Norman Powell for him, so that gets weird. But Maxi Kleba, Larry Nance Jr., those are guys that you could technically use PJ Tucker's salary for if you're roping in third teams and attaching draft equity. Those are some names to consider, but it's just you can't be until the Paul George domino falls. You just you don't know what they're going to do.
I like the Kleba, the idea of the Kleba fit. If he's,
I don't know why Dallas would help a conference rival. Maybe they're looking at it as like, well, you just lost Paul George and gave James Harden $40 million. So yes, we will take your draft pick. For Maxi Kleba.
Right. And you're not a threat. So take whoever. All right. That takes us to the Lakers here. They got a new coach.
Whoa!
Right? That's official. Is that official? Did I just break news?
I'm sorry, very quickly.
Yeah.
What a terrible job by the Lakers. I'm open. I said this on the pod I recorded without you, which was awful, by the way. I'm open to the idea that JJ Redick is going to be a very good coach. I think everyone should be. If you want to get into the process, whatever. This is them going after Dan Hurley was akin to proposing to somebody without knowing the answer. And then they frame it this way. I don't know whether they're doing it to protect LeBron or they're just fucking stupid, but you don't make any head coaching decision based off the developmental arc of Max Christie. How many times was that in a Woj news story where they're excited about the opportunity for a coach to come in and develop Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, and Max Christie? Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves are fucking 26 years old. Like, this is not, I'm just, that felt better.
It's a weird thing to try to sell for a team that has LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and LeBron James.
I hope Max Christie leaves in free agency now.
The Lakers are just like, all our grand plans are ruined. We lost Max Christie. He's never going to develop now. I mean, I don't have a strong take on Redick other than like, if you sort of like trim all the bullshit away, the Lakers did not get their first choice and everybody knows it. And that makes things awkward.
This is also proof of why you listen and should subscribe to Hardwood Knocks, because JJ Redick and LeBron James, you might like their podcast. Guess what? That's now defunct. They might have like a bid farewell episode, but Grant and I refuse to leave for all these head coaching vacancies.
Less competition. One down, one cross. All right. So LeBron James has a player option. He can pick it up. He can extend. He can opt out. He can extend. He can get a no trade clause only if he opts out.
Right? Like, that's the move here. Is he's going to opt out and get a 3-year deal with a no trade clause, right?
I think that's got to be. I mean, for him, for sure, that's the move. And the Lakers are just kind of in a position where they can't say no. So that's, at least then we don't have to speculate too much. Well, we probably still would have to speculate about LeBron getting traded if there's a weird news cycle at some point. But that would at least dampen that effect, I guess. D'Angelo Russell also has a player option. The mighty Max Christie, developmental superstar, is an early bird restricted free agent. Taurean Prince is unrestricted, I think.
Yeah, he is.
So they're going to be below the first apron if they bring LeBron back and let Russell walk, which let him walk. He's got a player option. It's kind of up to him. They can bring back Christie and D'Lo, and that probably puts them in the first apron, which would mean you're looking at the mid level. if they don't shed a bunch of money to potentially try to get to that $12.9 million full mid level. And we've mentioned LeBron's an extension candidate here.
By the way, because of all that stuff you mentioned, I'm assuming because it's fucking Max Christie, it won't matter. Depending on which apron number they're operating off of, that will impact what they're able to give Max Christie, who is only a 2-year restricted free agent. So this is not so if someone wants to come in with a poison pill for Max Christie, developmental superstar, the Lakers are in trouble.
I mean, if that happens, can you imagine?
I fucking hope Danny Ainge gets creative with just do it. Just to be like
Redick would have to like
to
back
build
out
around
of
Max Christie. What the fuck are you gonna do now, Lakers?
Well, Redick would have to back out of the job because he's like, I took this position understanding that Max Christie was going to be here. Deals off. What are their biggest needs? I mean, assume LeBron's back. If Russell's not back, then you probably are looking at a scoring guard, right? Or someone else that's going to space the floor, hit shots from one of the backcourt positions. I mean, Austin Reeves is going to be leaned on harder, I think, no matter what, and probably should be. But you're still probably short like a lights out shooter, which D'Lo kind of was for all his flaws. Like
Max Christie. What are
the you know what? They don't have any needs. Max Christie's going to fill them all. Whatever they need him to become, he'll become. What's the biggest question for this team this offseason in your mind?
Do they make a trade? Because one, if they're going to make a trade, it's going to require consolidation. And so that could, in theory, if they end up taking back more money in consolidation, they're going to have to figure out a way to stay beneath the luxury, like the first ape. Like, so that's, man, this new CBA, I mean, it's kicking my ass. We're all learning together on the fly with this thing. But that's the biggest question for me is one, are they going to go that route? And basically, if they re-sign D'Angelo Russell, they kind of can't unless they're shaving money as part of any deal, which I guess isn't outside the realm of possibility. But I have to imagine if you're getting Trae Young or Donovan Mitchell and shedding money in the process, like that's going to up whatever draft equity you have to include. So I'm fascinated, and would be my question for you is, do you think they make a trade, like a bigger trade? And if they do, would you running the Lakers gear it more towards the let's go get that third star, describing the exact player, a scoring guard who could run the offense independent of LeBron? Or would you be like, well, let's try and break this up and get 2-3 rotation players in here? Because as you mentioned, they also need high volume shooting away from the ball. They could use just two-way wings. Who is the two-way wing on this team aside from Max Christie?
It was Taurean Prince, or they thought that, and they were wrong. That's it. I'm disappointed that it's, well, I don't know if disappointed is the right word. Somewhat surprised that the latest reporting kind of seems like Donovan Mitchell is going to stay with Cleveland. So I think you're going to end up being right on that one. But that was my, like, if it's him or if it's Trae or if it's any number of the other available, quote unquote, available guys, I just wanted Mitchell here. And that means you're trading Reeves, you're trading Rui, you're trading Gabe Vincent or Vanderbilt maybe. And I don't know, they can trade 3 firsts, right?
3 firsts, 2 swaps. Yep.
Yeah.
And then they have some interesting seconds, but yeah, 3 firsts and 2 swaps is the best.
I liked Mitchell just because he fits what I was describing. Is like, can you run the offense first? Absolutely. Can you space the floor as a really dangerous shooter? Absolutely. Could you theoretically be like the guy next to Anthony Davis that carries the team into the post LeBron era? Yeah, could be that too. So I liked Mitchell here. I just don't, it seems like that's
done, at least for now.
Yeah, probably highly unlikely to happen now. So I feel less good about Trae Young, kind of like full stop. But I still do think ultimately I can't get away from thinking that this is a team that will go try to find a third star. That just feels like what they're going to do to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the vibe I'm getting.
I think you're wrong, as always. No, I think you're wrong, but only I thought you were right up until like a few days ago, just because of the framing of we're making jokes about Max Christie, but the way they're framing that makes me think that they're preparing their fan base for getting the messaging out there. Like, we're not going to go trade this stuff now because maybe they're want to wait till they have more stuff to trade, or maybe they're thinking Donovan Mitchell will be available in a year via trade and not now. Something along like similar with Trae Young. Maybe they think my new favorite target, if we assumed LaMelo Ball stays if we assume Donovan Mitchell stays in Cleveland, is now LaMelo Ball. It's like, why don't you maybe you don't include Reeves, put every pick on the table that you have, and then Rui and Jalen Hood-Schifino and Gabe Vincent, and does that get you LaMelo Ball? But I think now they've kind of telegraphed that, like, we're just gonna, like, we're kind of trying to plan for the post LeBron era, even though LeBron at age 40 is still a top 15 player. Like,
Mhm.
so but that's my guess now.
I mean, I think while conceding that, I thought that they would chase a third star, and that's just because that's a Lakers thing to do. I think maybe doing what you're talking about is actually the right decision
No,
because,
I think
like,
it's wrong. I I'm
really,
just
because like
You
no,
have
like
LeBron. This is just like it's the Warriors with Steph all over again, except one or the whole thing is like you're not in the repeater tax. Like you go out and like and stop talking about like Anthony Davis as this post LeBron building block when Anthony Davis is going to be in his 30s. Like, what are we doing here? I get if you want to have the discussion of do you go get a star or do you want to try and is there a way to get DeJounte Murray and Bogdan Bogdanovic or DeJounte Murray and Onyeka Okongwu or DeJounte Murray and DeAndre Hunter and Onyeka Okongwu. Like, if you want to go that route, I understand it, but you can't sit here, pearl clutch your assets, and let LeBron and then just draft Bronny James at 55 and be like, we're good. I'm hoping this all ends to say, we said this a bunch of times, that we just see D'Angelo Russell's new contract with the Lakers be a dollar for dollar match of just someone like
yeah, yeah.
LaMelo Ball. He just gets the exact amount of money LaMelo Ball's on the books for next season.
Can we talk about how ridiculous it is that we both think that they are going to do two different things, and we both think that those things are the wrong thing? Like we've got it all completely covered.
Uh,
It's, go ahead.
Targets for this team, I'm just like, again, we don't know what they're spending. Like this division is kind of, well, the next two will be easier, but the first three teams are kind of fucked in terms of certainty. Like their just spending power is going to be very fluid. Um, like, so Jalen Smith would be a good fit. Does Kyle Lowry or Chris Paul come at sort of the minimum special? If Chris Paul gets waived or Lowry's not back in Philly, do they have a reunion with Malik Beasley? What is Luke Kennard course with the team option? Gary Harris, could Spencer Dinwiddie come back? Alec Burks, if they have the bigger MLE, Najee Marshall would of course fit, similar to Caleb Martin. They'd be an interesting a lot of people think Tobias Harris's market is going to be mini MLE territory. I disagree, but if it is, he would be a great flyer for this team. Javonte Green, Haywood Highsmith. Could you convince Nick Batum not to retire? Luke Cornett. These are all that, like, it just runs the gamut of spending power. If you have anyone to add, that's fine. I was going to close with, if you were to make the consolidation trade based off realistic, so like you're kind of ruling out Donovan Mitchell, what is the player right now that gets you to do that? Like, is it Trae Young? I'd probably do it for Trae Young if you could get him, but I know you differ on
Yeah,
that.
I probably still, if I'm going that route, I think it's him. I think it's LaMelo, and then after that, like I don't know that you're getting enough of a like, oh, this
Would you
guy
do it
is.
for the Reeves, 3 picks and 2 swaps for Larry Markkinen? Probably that's too much if you're the Lakers,
I
right?
think that's a little too much, and I think if
What if
you're
you keep
also
Reeves? Like they could just send out Rui basically for Markkinen. That's
if
pretty
you
close
could
to
keep
being done.
Reeves, I'm a lot more interested because you're just like you're subtracting. I don't know, one of your better
And
shooters
then
before.
Utah at that point has just shorted the futures of Cleveland, Minnesota, and the Lakers, which one of those bets is gonna pan out
Yeah, if
in a
not
big.
more. Okay, yeah, no, I think that does it for the Lakers. You want to take us through the Suns here?
No, honestly.
This will be
let's
quick.
skip
I mean,
let's skip ahead to the Sacramento Kings. So notable free agents, Royce O'Neal, who we expect to get a balloon payment so that they could decide to, like if you think Royce O'Neal is a $13 million player, I think the Suns are going to make him an $18 million player, something like that. Eric Gordon has a player option. Don't worry. We saw that Drew Eubanks opted out already, but Caleb Shiop is no longer on that team, but he opted in. Salary cap situation, they're just in second apron city, so they can only spend minimums. They do have Kevin Durant extension eligible for a 1 year. I think it's like $59.7 million max. Their needs, Grant, I don't know how you'd prioritize these, and I want to know if you would add or differ on any of them. Athleticism on the wings, a big who fits Mike Budenholzer's defensive schemes, a more conventional floor general, even though I am a big believer in Devin Booker, the playmaker, and then point of attack defense, which I guess in theory could dovetail with athleticism on the wings. Did we cover anything else like
I
that this
mean,
team that's
yeah,
in the second apron needs?
yeah. I mean, they signed like guys of all stripes to the minimums last year. You know, they had Eubanks at center, and they had Keita Bates-Diop and Eric Gordon on the wings, and like they kind of need all that stuff again. So it's just we talked a lot about the point guard thing last year and whether or not like how big of a need that was for them. I think you tended to fall on the side of like Devin Booker is doing fine. Like they don't need a point guard. I still am kind of like, and because I do think there are like a decent number of guys you could get at the minimum at the point, I'm looking at that a little more like strongly than I might have before. But like they need everything. They need a ton because again, same thing we said with the Clippers and Zubats. Like you get into the deeper rungs of the playoffs, which maybe they'll make this time and maybe they won't. Like Nurkic is just not the guy for that. And like also, by the way, you can't with a minimum salary realistically go out and get the guy for that. But if we're talking needs, we're talking needs. That's just something that they don't really have unless you want to play Kevin Durant at center again and see how that works. I mean, like other than O'Neal, who they're going to juice up, I think for purposes of potentially trading
Which
salary
then
wise.
would mean like that they're not going to make that trade in the offseason if they're going to make it in the middle of the year. And so it's just like, all right, so you're literally just settling on minimums. And I think it's kind of lost. I know people have mentioned Nurkic. You could trade Grayson Allen, but like, is there a scenario
You got to
where
wait
you're
on
trading
him, though,
Grayson
don't
Allen
you?
and getting better?
They can't. Well, one, probably not. But two, I think they can't trade Allen until like October, maybe or something. There's some date on it. I forget what it was, but I don't think they can trade Allen this summer. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I thought they could trade him before the start of the season. I'll double check though. But like Nurkic's deal is not one that I would argue that no team is going to view that as a net positive. And so then you have to compensate if he's your salary anchor for that in addition to who you're getting. I've been trying to figure out how to get Robert Williams III here. Like if you put your 2031 pick on the table, I'm sure even Portland would take that if it means that they end up reacquiring Nurkic at some point. Although the timing, of course, of the Ayton deal would absolutely matter. But like you can't give up that asset for just Robert Williams,
right? Because that's all you got, really.
Right.
Like I also think we haven't really talked about this too much, and it's going to be stale like immediately. But they're picking 22nd. I think they should be a team that looks to trade down a few spots and get like a later first and then also a second rounder out of it. Just because, I mean, they've traded almost all their seconds too. Like you look through their draft assets, and it's just there's nothing there. So you just need more because they will be in a position where whether it's Young or whether it's Nurkic or I mean O'Neal or Nurkic or whoever, like you're gonna, I mean maybe not O'Neal, but you're gonna need to attach something to these to incentivize teams to give you actual players back that are potentially upgrades. So like you just need more picks that however you can get them. So that's I think should be an emphasis. Again, this will be useless in like 48 hours, but still.
Yeah, I honestly don't see what the trade would be this offseason. Again, it's something it feels like maybe you attach it the middle of the year when you can do Nurkic or Allen or Royce O'Neal, presumably at that point. And then what does you can't and the number by the way, you can't use the number 22 pick at that point because it'll be a player and you can't aggregate players. So it's what can this plus the 2031 pick get us, which is why I guess it wouldn't shock me if they went, but like Nasir Little makes too little to like do anything meaningful. So, but I wouldn't shock me if they traded this first round pick to get a veteran in here. I just don't know what is so I propose something along the lines of Nurkic. There was a second round pick in there and the number 22 pick. If you're Charlotte, would you take that and send back Grant Williams and Nick Richards?
I probably would if I'm Charlotte.
So it was Phoenix's 2031 second, number 22 and Nurkic for Grant Williams and Nick Richards.
Maybe I might do that if I'm Charlotte, and that would make. I think that probably does help Phoenix a fair amount because you're getting two guys that are gonna play, and you're short on those at this point. But yeah, but then you're like, that's it. That's unless you
want to play and I don't even know what player would be the 2031 bullet. And what you are doing is, you would still have Allen when he's trade eligible, and you would still have Royce O'Neal at his inflated number, but now you've traded your most expensive expendable player, broken him up into two smaller deals. So it gets even harder from a standalone perspective of if you're looking to reroute Grant Williams, you're doing it with a number that's below 14 million rather than Nurkic's 17, 18 million plus.
I wonder too, if this isn't a team that like, and just because of the practicalities, it may be the way they have to do it. This is a team that should just wait until the deadline to make moves because like, at least at that point, you're going to know like how are KD and Beal holding up. And like if one of them's already beat up or both of them are hurt or one's out for the year at that point, it's like, well, we're definitely there's no reason to give up our 2031 first and whatever. Like, so building the team that you think is going to finish the season like now for them makes less sense than most others because you're so top heavy if you lose one, I mean, you can make this argument, I guess, with like, oh, if the Sixers shouldn't do anything because what if Embiid's hurt in February or whatever? But like, you know what I mean? For the Suns, it might make more sense to just wait.
Do you think you're in danger of, I don't know why this would be the reason, because he knows the realities, but if they do nothing, there's just the minimum contract, or that Kevin Durant's like, trade me to Houston so I could play for Ime Udoka or something. Like, I just.
And you know what? Is that the worst thing in the world if you're the Suns? Like, because I mean, from our perspective, of course not. Because you might like you get some assets back. You're suddenly not just in salary jail forever. But from the way that the Suns have conducted business, that they're just like, why would we ever do that? It's Kevin Durant. We want superstars. Why would we get rid of him?
They're just he's heading into his age 36 season, man. They're just such a fragile situation. And to that end, any minimums, like guys that spring to mind that you would like that you could see potentially coming? I mean, they do have the benefit of, like, could they, in theory, they could promise up to one starting spot, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. I think I'm obligated to mention either Chris Dunn or Dennis Smith Jr., just guys like caretaker point guards that are not out there to do anything but defend and like pass the ball to the shooters. Kyle Lowry, if you're looking, I'm fixated on point guards. It doesn't have to be that. Chris Paul's probably not going back to Phoenix. I don't think that seems
really funny
though. Yeah, I don't know. They are definitely in minimums. Like a lot of the guys you
Monte
think of.
Morris is, that might be like, did his market just fall, like plummet through the
That's
floor?
possible. Yeah, that's possible. He could be gettable there. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
Luke Cornett for the minimum might be interesting here when you're looking at how Budenholzer wants to play defense.
Yeah,
maybe
he could be your Brook Lopez kind of minus the
compare everybody to Brook Lopez.
That's what you have to do when a coach who's really associated with a certain set of players takes over a new job. You're like, who's the new Chris Middleton on this team? Like that.
I do wonder, now that I'm thinking about it, do you think Nas Little plus a second or even Nas Little straight up could get you Nick Richards? If you're Charlotte, obviously. If I'm Phoenix, I just do it.
Yeah, I guess Charlotte could probably. I mean, Charlotte might draft another big too here. And Mark Williams is still ahead of Richards in the pecking order, presumably, right? And can't
they also, so like in addition to Grant Williams being there, they do have Poku as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I might do that. Yeah, this is what we're talking about though. Like, is Nas Little going to get you a piece that you might actually use?
I would start. Would you? If I had Nick Richards, I am absolutely starting him over Yusuf Nurkic. Do you agree?
I mean, I'm not doing that until I've pumped up Nurkic's stats over a bunch of starts so I can trade him.
Well, I'm actually wondering, would his stats be better if you're running him in lineups that have fewer stars in it?
I mean, what did he have? I mean, he had like decent numbers this past year, didn't he?
Right, but I feel like their team would be better with Nick Richards playing more minutes. So do you give him the ceremonial start, and then at the 11-20 mark, just sub in Nick Richards?
11-20. That's aggressive.
Do you want to move on to the Sacramento Kings?
Yes.
Do we have anything else to add? This team is just, they're more locked into everything than, because other second apron teams have key free agents or more draft picks to trade or swap with. And Phoenix is just like, they've basically played that entire hand. So I guess the Clippers would be comparable, but they're more fascinating because of the Paul George, James Harden elements.
Yeah, the Bucks, the Clippers, I mean, obviously the Celtics, these other second apron teams, there's just, they can do more. Phoenix is, I mean, not a newsflash, but like they are super inflexible. Sacramento Kings, free agents this offseason. Malik Monk, not among them, back for 4 years and $78 million. That's the most that the Kings could offer him. And so we can. By the way, he went for 4 years and 125 and dunked on's mocked offseason. So that was like, they're normally pretty, like, those dudes are cap. You think we're geeks. Those are caps lock cap geeks. So they don't normally miss by that much. And so that's why I'm still open to the idea that this CBA isn't necessarily good for players. I guess you can argue that Malik Monk, maybe it gets players longer extensions or contracts with their current team. But like, if you're a free agent who's not a star, I still really think that this CBA is going to end up harming you. I'm open to people disagreeing, but sorry, that was just a subplot. I think, I mean, let's be honest, like the sort of overall effect of the CBA is kind of more interesting than the like specifics of like what happens with Malik Monk. Is like, so is this just the normal now where guys are just gonna stay with their teams? I feel like in some ways, like ownership might be happier with that if those are the results, right? I feel like every CBA change forever has been at least with some eye toward how do teams just keep their guys, And it's like,
Except
well,
unless you get too expensive, where their CBA is very much geared towards "fuck you, break it up."
right. Well, that was the unintended consequence of the last one. It's like Anthony Davis takes off from New Orleans, and it's like, well, shit, that didn't work. Anyway, so Malik Monk's back. JaVale McGee, Alex Len, Kessler Edwards are free agents. The Kings are about $2 million over the tax line, with Monk now back on the books, which means that their best spending tool is going to be that mini mid-level. De'Aaron Fox is extension eligible, 3 for just under 166. What do you think about that number before we move on?
I'm waiting, if I'm him, just to get the longer extension next year.
Yeah, he's good
I would
enough.
offer it. I would absolutely offer it if I'm Sacramento. I just don't think he would sign it.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know, this is a weird way to frame it, but like certain guys could get a season-ending injury and miss a year, and still like that's not affecting their next extension offer. Fox might not quite be there, but he's like fairly close to where if he had like a lost year, I think he's still someone that teams would say.
I think, and with his like criticality to this team, he would probably still fall under that bucket too.
Well, that especially because they're cooked without him. So their biggest needs, I mean, another scorer. Monk being back really helps, but this is a team that still just lacks. Sorry, Keegan Murray is getting better, but they still lack just like another big athletic defense first, like 3-and-D combo for whatever, a Harrison. If you could get them like 2016 Harrison Barnes, like that's great. But we have 2024 Harrison Barnes, like that's kind of, to me, what the Kings need. Another, I think a backup point guard that you could play ahead of Davion Mitchell that's going to get guarded would help. Change of pace big so that Sabonis isn't your only option, although like he's just going to be on the floor whenever the minutes matter, and there's not a way to get around that. I don't know. I guess like maybe the questions we could talk about are like, what's next after re-signing Monk? How like what tools do they even have to be aggressive other than starting to trade away some firsts? And Harrison Barnes, I think and Kevin Huerter is someone else.
They seem like that so I guess I don't disagree with what you think your need is, but because of the emergence of Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray, I think it allows you to be more flexible in the tight. I still think they need another. Like if you want, for instance, if you're in a trade, you would rather prioritize rim protection that could play next to Sabonis. I think now that you have Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray, it gives you the flexibility to do that. Or if you want to prioritize, we want a more dynamic scorer who will break down defenses that can play next to Fox, maybe in a lineup with Monk as well. Because it feels like even if you count Monk as that guy, they still only have 2 of those players that operate like that, because that's not Sabonis's MO. Maybe Keegan Murray gets there. But it does seem like they're hawking the Harrison Barnes, Kevin Huerter trade package together. They were linked to Zach LaVine right before the Monk news. And once I saw that the Monk news came out, I was like, oh, they're done with the Zach LaVine pursuit. And they're still being mentioned as a landing spot for Zach LaVine. I guess it doesn't cost you any real pick equity. It might be an interesting value play, but I don't know. Like investing that much, like you're paying Zach LaVine all this money, and then like you have De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis make that just that doesn't move me for the Kings.
I just think you're not going to be able to defend, like, and look, we're weighing them against
offensive drop off last year at all, to the extent of, well, like maybe it's better to just lean all the way back into offense then.
That's the theory. That's one theory. I just think like they're kind of like, look, there's not a move that they can make that gets them into the like, oh, the Denver, Minnesota, OKC, Dallas tier. I don't think so. So like maybe there is just like, let's be the best version of like of ourselves from 2 years ago. So I get it. But I think like if you have LaVine and Sabonis and maybe Monk and Fox on the floor closing games, like, is Murray your only? I mean, Fox has his moments, but he's better as like a disruptor off the ball than on it. For generally speaking, he turns it up in the playoffs sometimes, but like, or play in sometimes. But that's just like, you can't. Who are you? When you go against Minnesota, like, what are you doing like with Edwards and everybody else? Like, you got nothing. What are you doing against Dallas? Like, forget it. You can't guard that team. They may not be able to acquire the player that can help them guard those teams, but I do think that is something they got to like, that's got to be where you try, doesn't it? Even if LaVine could come with no picks going out, which is like kind of a hard thing for me to believe. I I don't know. That's kind of exciting. If you just get Zach LaVine and you're only giving up players, maybe I'm talking myself into that one.
They do have, so I do, well, I'll quickly, based off mini MLE targets, unless they're going to shed salary and try to access the full non-taxpayer, in which case Najee Marshall, just go get him, every single team in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
But like, could they be that? And some of these guys might fall in minimum territory, like DeLon Wright, Chris Dunn, and Dennis Smith Jr. We have to mention. I think that they're definitely more serviceable offensively than Davion Mitchell at this point. Is Josh Richardson healthy? Derrick Jones Jr. You're not going to get for the mini MLE. It'd be interesting. Torrey Craig. I really think this is all to say. I think if they make anything or acquire a player that's like in their caps lock rotation, it's going to happen via trade.
Yes.
And I personally think that their best trade package is harmed by having the number 13 pick. I would rather have the idea of trading a 2025 pick, which is now owed to Atlanta. I understand number 13 is a lottery pick if the Kings are better next year. Regardless, you can still put 4, including number 13, first round picks on the table, in addition to just swaps in alternating years. That's like, if the Nets ever have their come to reality moment, Mikal Bridges, like, that is an offer that's a real offer. I don't know if there's a team out there that would. I'm not saying the Kings go. They don't want to trade Keegan Murray. I'm not saying they go for first round picks plus swaps. You know how I feel about Mikal Bridges as a number 3 option, so I'd absolutely probably do it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's a real offer. But they're probably more thinking about like, or in smaller scale territory, in which case, Ayo Dosunmu would be great for this team. Denny Avdia would be fantastic for this team. I don't know how open Washington is to moving off from him. I just don't. I think it's a weird thing where I don't know who the actual best player they could theoretically acquire is. Like, you could talk about Jayshawn Tate, even a flyer on Moses Moody. Should this maybe be an Andrew Wiggins team if Golden State is open to taking back? I don't like. I mean, like, building out that deal is weird because of Golden State's cap situation. And I don't think Barnes is not making enough just to do Barnes for Wiggins straight up. I don't believe. What is Barnes at now? 18 million, right? Yeah. So Barnes and Davion Mitchell, or is it Barnes and Trey Lyles, Barnes and Sasha Vezenkov? So are there any names that the one that I thought about, I just don't know. Naz Reid would be great, but like, I don't think he's available. Should this be, I have actually 2 names for you. Would you take a flyer if they want to move him on Jonathan Isaac?
100%.
You would.
Yeah. Okay. That's the name I was going to mention from the list here. It's like, again, you might get 15 minutes a game. You might not get that at all, but like, he solves, like, one guy can do it, but like, he's about as good as you can do if you're trying to say like, we need this defense to be fringe top 10, which is hard with the current personnel. Like, Isaac is the type of guy that at least when he's out there, you will play at a top 10, top 5 defensive level.
He can't. I really don't want to see him play next to Sabonis.
And so you have to trust that he's going to make threes, which is like super. I mean,
I guess it helps though. Like, what Sabonis can do on the perimeter with the handoff stuff, like that might open opportunities for him to be used more off ball and like or around the dunker spot. But I defensively, sure. The other name I thought about, because some people have posited that Alex Caruso's arrival has made Lou Dort semi-expendable. I'd probably disagree, but like, Lou Dort would be a really good fit on this team. I just don't know what is the pick equity. And then, like, because Kevin Huerter on OKC makes sense, or even Harrison Barnes, depending on if they don't do anything else with their cap space, could make sense there. So if it was that plus picks, one of those players plus picks, I would consider it. Would you think about if Memphis said they would take straight up Kevin Huerter or Harrison Barnes for Marcus Smart?
I'm doing that.
You would, even after the year that Smart just had?
Yeah, I would. Because you're worried that maybe he's just done. That's a strong possibility. But like, what I'm just thinking ceiling, like a decent version of Marcus Smart's going to give you more than what you would expect to get from Huerter or Barnes. I think
the ceiling on that deal would definitely, either variation of it would be higher for Sacramento, but I feel like I would like it more for the Grizzlies. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, just because, well, for that's just reversed. It's like, if you're the Grizzlies, you're trying to win a lot of games next year, and you have a pretty significant variable with Smart of like, he might play 30 games, he might play 60 terrible games. Like, Harrison Barnes is just like, you just set the metronome and you know roughly what you're getting. And Huerter is like, especially if you're losing Kennard, Huerter just slides right into that role, and you replace the shooting and decent secondary playmaking too.
Yeah, that's I love it for Memphis. I'm like, I don't know what the move. Maybe TJ. What about TJ McConnell? I don't know what you'd have to attach to Vezenkov to like help grease those wheels. He's not someone who could shoot, but like, he'll be like him and Monk that'd be a tiny backcourt, but like
Yeah.
they run like bench heavy mobs with Monk and McConnell out there. There'd be a lot of fun stuff happening.
And Mike Brown they turn on the fucking Jets, like has been trying to get this team to run forever. And TJ McConnell will assist you in that endeavor. Like they will, and that plays to their strengths too, because they're going to be kind of small. Probably they're not going to have great shooting all the time. And so you're going to need to get it done in transition, which like Fox is still, I don't know where I'd put him, but one of the 10 fastest guys in the league end to end, maybe top 5. It's, he's still right there. Sabonis isn't going to run, but like you definitely, if you have Monk, you have hypothetically McConnell, Keon Ellis can get up and down. Keegan Murray can get like, you could fit a guy who's just going to push pace, and that might have like a pretty significant boost to the team's offensive production.
I do think whatever they do, and the deep cut name I'll mention is a free agent, because I think he can be a better than what we saw this past year in Phoenix. If Drew Eubanks is just available for the minimum still, if you're looking like that's going to be a backup big upgrade to me over an Alex Lynn, JaVale McGee type. Yeah. I know Trey Lyles is definitely more dynamic as that. But I do, to wrap up on this team, I think it's going to be whatever they do, the level of it and the player that it's focused on. I think that's going to say more about how they feel with regards to Keegan Murray than necessarily about the state of their team, because it might not address their biggest need, but they might just be like, look at what Keegan Murray did on ball offensively, or look at I did not see Keegan Murray doing what he did defensively last year. I just did not see that coming. Like that was just someone who was the level of assignments he was having. So that's another element of this that I think you and I will have to consider if they do something, which my closing thought would be, I hate framing it like this. They have to do something. Like this is not run it back territory when you're looking at the state of the Western Conference.
I think that's right. I think the way I frame it for the Kings this offseason is like, you really cannot get comfortable with the idea that 22-23 was a peak. Like that can't be the peak, because they took a step back this past season. You take another one, and then it's just, then you start asking the existential questions of like, well, how we need to bust the core up, right? Because it's not good enough. So you don't want to get there. So you do need to make, I think, a significant move, unless Murray is just going to be like a fringe all-star next year, which I believe there's a decent amount of belief that that's going to happen. I'm not sure I'm all the way there on that.
But that, even if you think he is, like, that can't be your only, we'll call it upside play. I'm not saying they need to acquire a younger player like to have more. It's right. Like you need to elevate your ceiling beyond what you think is going to happen internally. Like, you know what they could do? Just finish the season healthier, and that would like be a boom. But
well, they did that in the peak year of 22-23.
they almost beat the eventual NBA champs that year.
That's right.
So I think I'm more optimistic on their future than I think a lot of people are. I understand the dangers that you're laying out, but I will say, like, this is one of probably the most pivotal off seasons in franchise history when you look at how good they aspire to be, and in theory, what a semi-significant move could actually do for them. It's really a mission critical off season for them.
And how good they need to be to keep pace in the West. Like you could get marginally better and still have a worse record just because the teams around you get better.
It's going to get harder because Keegan Murray is going to be extension eligible after next season. And if he continues this trajectory, we're going to be talking about a max extension for Keegan Murray. Like that's a fact. We didn't get to Cleveland hiring Kenny Atkinson. I liked it. Scotty Barnes signed a max extension. We'll tackle those on a different podcast. Would you like to take us out of here, Mr. Hughes?
Sure would. Thanks everyone for listening, for watching. Remember, if you haven't done so already, wherever you're consuming this, watching or listening to it, rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up on YouTube, leave some comments. We'll respond to them if they're
flood it with positivity, even if I don't respond. We need to get in the habit of asking a question, like a prompt at the beginning for people to, I keep forgetting. I'm sorry. I get so excited to see you and ask you how you're doing. I just forget.
It's all right. What else? If you'd like to participate more, we're going to get back to guest players and all that stuff soon. Join our Discord, links for that, as well as how to get our merch in the YouTube and podcast description. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Make sure that you shout out Frank Ntilikina and apologize to Jared Allen.